problems that we're going to have in this country, Barry, because irrespective of what the topic is, whether it's cutting this, slashing that, making the ages older for this, whatever it is, it does always come back in the minds of people at home as well to, hold on a second, why are you taking from me, someone that's paid into the tax system, someone that's done the right thing, worked hard, whatever, maybe has an illness now if it's about benefits or whatever. They will keep coming back to that point that Zia's just made. It will always keep coming back to that.
Look, of course, I understand why Zia makes those points, but let's actually address the question that you asked, which is about the pension age and should it change. The last Labour government actually cut pensioner poverty by half. This Labour government is committed to the triple lock, and we've explicitly ruled out any increase in contributions for the entirety of...
Right. Buckle up, because whilst you were busy arguing about whether it's called a bread roll or a bap, Sir Keir Starmer just casually became the Prime Minister under whose watch the most migrants have arrived by small boat. Not most this year, not most this decade, most ever. And Michelle Dewberry is having absolutely none of it. She's called out Labour with the kind of brutal honesty that makes politicians squirm harder than a worm in hot ashes, and frankly, someone needed it. Because whilst number 10 spouts reassuring soundbites about deterrence and patience, the actual numbers are doing what Labour's approval ratings are doing, going through the roof in the wrong direction. Quick favour, if you're finding this properly mental, hit that subscribe button. Over 94% of you haven't yet. It's completely free, takes literally 2 seconds, and means the absolute world to us here at British Mirror. Cheers if you did. Right, back to the carnage. So let's talk numbers, shall we? Because numbers don't lie, though politicians certainly give it a good go. In just 19 months, not 19 years, 19 months, more than 65,870 migrants have made that perilous 21-mile journey across the Channel on Starmer's watch. To put that in perspective, that's more people than live in Canterbury. That's an entire city's worth of people crossing one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world on inflatable dinghies. Boris Johnson, for all his faults, and believe me, there's a long list, took 39 months to hit 65,815 arrivals. Starmer smashed past that figure in literally half the time. It's the only record Labour's breaking these days, and it's not one you'd want framed on the wall at party headquarters. The maths gets even more uncomfortable when you break it down. Starmer's averaging 117 arrivals per day. Per day! That's more than double Boris Johnson's daily average of 58. Even Rishi Sunak, who hardly covered himself in glory on this issue, managed to keep it to 81 per day over his 22 months. So when Labour stands at the dispatch box talking about their comprehensive strategy and their long-term vision, you've got to wonder if that vision includes actually looking at the statistics, because they're not exactly painting a picture of competence, are they? Now here's where it gets properly spicy. Because Michelle Dewberry wasn't just throwing numbers around like confetti at a disappointing wedding. She went straight for the jugular with Labour MP Jonathan Hinder, asking him a question that every politician dreads, the one that forces them to actually think about real people. She said, and I'm paraphrasing here with her exact energy, let's see if you're in one of these communities where these men are being dumped. Would you be sitting there thinking, hey, it's fine, we just need to wait? Absolutely brilliant that, because it's easy to talk about patience and process when you're sat in Westminster with your subsidised bar and your expenses account. It's considerably harder when you're a resident in a small coastal town watching your community transform overnight without any consultation, any support, or frankly, any consideration whatsoever. Michelle's point cuts right through the political waffle and lands squarely where it hurts. Would you accept this in your community? And if the answer's no, why should anyone else? She went on, proper fired up now, warning that whilst the government bangs on about deterrence and giving policies time to work, the numbers are absolutely going through the roof. Communities aren't just concerned anymore, they're anxious, they're frustrated, they feel completely abandoned. And can you blame them? When you've been promised action, promised control, promised that someone's actually got a grip on this situation, and then you watch the numbers climb higher and higher, like some nightmarish game of political limbo. How low can we go? Of course you're going to be furious. But wait, there's more, because 2025 was particularly spectacular, and not in a good way. Over 41,474 migrants arrived in that year alone. In the first 6 months of Starmer's premiership, 23,469 crossed, and despite freezing conditions in Calais and Dover, conditions that would make a polar bear think twice, over 800 migrants have already crossed in early 2026. On a single day, 273 people made that crossing. One day! That's nearly an entire jumbo jet's worth of people, except instead of a plane, they're crammed onto dinghies that wouldn't pass a safety inspection at a dodgy fairground. The record was officially broken at 3:45 in the afternoon, when the Border Force vessel Volunteer, ironic name that, docked in Dover carrying 65 migrants. That pushed Starmer's total to 65,874. Volunteer indeed, because nothing says voluntary quite like a government presiding over record-breaking illegal immigration whilst telling everyone they've got it under control. Now, Jonathan Hinder, the Labour MP Michelle was grilling, did try to mount a defence, and to be fair to him, he at least acknowledged the problem exists, which is more than some of his colleagues manage. He argued that constituents expect Labour to sort this out, and if they don't, voters will look to politicians with a harder line. He said, and I'm quoting here, "No one has been more vocal than me on the Labour backbenchers. Our constituents expect us to sort this out. If we don't, they'll look to voices who might not have much else to offer, but take a harder line." Right, so let's unpack that, shall we? He's essentially admitting that Labour's current approach isn't working, that voters are furious, and that if Labour doesn't get its act together, people will support politicians with tougher policies. Which rather begs the question, why aren't Labour implementing tougher policies now? Why wait until you've lost the next election to figure out that maybe, just maybe, averaging 117 illegal arrivals per day isn't a sustainable immigration policy? Hinder went on, "If we tackle illegal migration effectively, we can go into the next general election without immigration dominating the agenda. Legal migration is already falling sharply. That puts us in a stronger position." And this is where Michelle absolutely demolished him, because she's clearly been paying attention, whilst some MPs have been busy practicing their concerned faces in the mirror. Republican Congresswoman and Trump ally Anna Paulina Luna issued a warning that sounded less like diplomacy and more like a trailer for a sequel nobody asked for. If Britain bans X, she would push legislation to sanction not just Sir Keir Starmer personally, but Britain as a whole. Yes, you heard that correctly, sanctions. Miss Luna pointed to precedent. In 2024, the US imposed sanctions on a Brazilian judge who temporarily blocked X. Those measures included tariffs, visa revocations, and other consequences tied explicitly to free speech concerns. In other words, this is not theoretical, it has already happened elsewhere. Her message to Britain was unambiguous: reconsider this course of action or face consequences. Now, take a step back and appreciate the sheer absurdity of this moment. Britain, once famed for exporting liberal democratic values, is now being warned by American politicians that it risks sanctions for restricting free speech. The irony is so thick you could spread it on toast. Miss Luna went even further, framing the issue not as technical compliance, but as a political war against Elon Musk and free speech itself. That's a devastating line, because it reframes the entire debate. This is no longer about protecting children from artificial intelligence misuse. It becomes about whether the British state is comfortable suppressing platforms that host uncomfortable opinions. And this is where Sir Keir Starmer finds himself trapped between instincts. On one side, the loyally cautious internationalist who wants strong relations with the United States and a thriving technology sector. On the other, the political leader under pressure from activists, regulators and party figures who view free speech platforms with suspicion. The danger here is escalation. Ban X or even seriously attempt it, and Britain risks retaliation. Not just rhetorical outrage, but economic consequences, tariffs, trade delays, diplomatic frost. At a time when growth is already fragile, that's a gamble bordering on reckless. And let us not forget the U-turn factor. Starmer's critics believe this ends the same way many of his toughest-sounding positions do: announcement, headline, backlash, quiet retreat. If that happens, the damage may already have been done, the signal sent, the trust shaken. This entire saga exposes a central tension in modern British politics: the desire to regulate speech in the name of safety versus the reality of living in a globally connected digital economy. You can't pull one thread without tugging the entire web. So, where does this leave us? With a Prime Minister facing pressure from regulators at home, allies abroad, and critics who see this as an attack on free expression dressed up as concern. With a government that wants American investment while antagonizing American tech. And with a public watching another culture war skirmish play out while the cost of living quietly hums in the background. If Sir Keir Starmer truly wants to protect children, the focus should be on enforceable, proportionate rules applied consistently across platforms, not grandstanding threats aimed at a single company because it happens to host inconvenient voices. Because once you start banning platforms, you don't just silence the people you dislike,